Welcome to Youth2Knowledge. Before I start, I'll pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land, of the past, present and future. And it's very happy to be here today to share some of this information. So over the past 5 years, we've been volunteering, running drug awareness programs in high school in aims of early prevention with drug use. Over the past 5 years, I've spoken to over 30,000 youth in regards to drug awareness. Okay, I've learnt a lot along the way and really pushing that prevention. So the reason I got into running drug awareness programs, during high school I had a close group of friends and we'd always hang out together. There was like 10 of us, and after graduating high school I went and moved away in the mines for 2 years, up to Moranbah and Emerald. And when I come back, I found a lot of my mates had become addicted to drugs and alcohol. Something called ice had come along as well, back in, it would have been around 2010. So with the money that I'd saved in the mines, I decided to put into a program that taught students about how the brain operates and what drugs actually do to it. You can't hear it there? Can you hear me a bit better now? Thank you very much for that, because I've got something serious to say here. Okay, so I saved up this money and put it into a program that taught students how the brain operates and how it can be damaged by neurotoxins found in ice and other illegal drugs. So I went and enrolled in a diploma of counselling and studied business and a bit of neuroscience, and I started emailing people around the world, Amen Clinics California, Russia and the Blue Brain Project, multiple companies in New Zealand and Australia, slowly designing this program, which was 6 years ago now. And slowly we began to form this program called Youth2Knowledge, with psychologists and dietitians as well. Today we've spoken to over 100 high schools and around 30,000 youth. So everything we talk and teach in schools is science-based, okay? Nothing's left to theory. Everything is evidence-based with the latest science and technology. This is the program called Fuel that we run in high schools. It resonates really well with students, so we call it Fuel, and it's about fueling your mind, body and soul with healthy foods. We do a lot of health promotion as well as ice prevention and drug prevention as well. So a special thanks to everyone who's helped build this program along the way. A few brands up there, National Institute of Drug Abuse, Australian Crime Commission. We've worked with the Australian Government, Salvation Armies, Red Cross, Headspace, the police. At the start of the year we run a big contract with the PHN in Mackay and with the police, and got to share some of our information with 12 high schools. So yeah, we're actively preventing ice addiction through science-based education. As you can see, with some of the latest brain scans that we'll talk about today, and neuroscience. We'll explain how far drug education has advanced since the 1970s. So this is us at Bemiga, at the top of Australia, in some Indigenous communities. This was on the Sunshine Coast in Kawana, at Kawana High School, and quite a few other places. We've been through 3 states, Queensland, Victoria and South Australia, giving this information around. So we all know that ice is ruining lives, as we've heard, socially endangering communities and physically as well. We also know that it's putting pressure on the mental health system. For what I've been told by some officials is that the health system was originally built for people with cardiovascular disease and obesity rates and people who get older, and when ice come through, it completely ripped through, and it wasn't built for this type of thing. It's the reason we have to keep on having these conferences trying to work out how to deal with this situation. And we also know that we can't arrest our way out of this problem, coming from the mouth of one of the police officers who was recently explaining it. And research shows that we can't explain tall tales and scare tactics, okay? They don't work, so we can't keep on giving false statements like if you take an ecstasy pill, for example, you're going to die. It's one of the ones we get told. and one of the students will see one of their friends take an ecstasy tablet and they don't die, so they start dwelling in it as well. So instead of lying to students and doing false statements, what we're actively doing is using science-based information and education, using technology to explain how the brain operates, what's good for our brain and what's bad for our brain, which we will love to explain today, some of the parts that we explain. One of the main things though is that drug education hasn't changed since the 70s, okay? Basically a lot of this stuff is still around, it's theory based. It's time to advance drug education, and it's what we're doing, and we're seeing huge decreases in students wanting to take drugs and giving information about brain scans like this. So this is called a single photon emission computed tomography scan, or SPECT for short, and what it does is show blood flow throughout the brain. On the left we have a healthy brain, on the right we have a drug user brain. So these SPECT scans are given to us by our partners in California. This is of somebody who's aged 21, okay? So 21 on the healthy brain and 21 as a drug user from around 2 years of drug abuse. As you can see, there's very abnormal blood flow in the frontal lobe. So what we'll do in high schools is actively explain how the brain operates and how different parts of the brain control different regions of the body and how they can be destroyed. Now we've got a bit of a stat here with smoking. When cigarettes first come out, cigarettes were first deemed to be cancerous in 1964, the Surgeon General come out. If you look at stats from cigarettes around 1964, it wasn't until the early 70s when the first campaign of cigarettes come out explaining that it causes cancer. As you can see, there's a decrease here. Okay, it's very similar to what we're doing in schools with the technology and science. So one of the statistics that we've found in high schools is that only about 8% of students knew that ice was neurotoxic to the brain, okay, which is a very basic thing. So I won't explain these yet, I'll go into it a bit later because they're a bit complex, there's about 8 things in there. But afterwards, 96% of students understood what neurotoxicity is to the brain, okay, does to the brain, or did, sorry. So, look, one of my main points here is that all the resources is being spent on treatment and barely nothing is spent on prevention. So the less that we look into prevention, the more these problems are going to arise, and the worse the sector is going to get with more patients and more patients. We're one of the only people doing this type of information in high schools, and we're basically volunteering, okay? And I'm going to hand it over now to Brad to talk about cliff theory.
Okay, so the main issue on everyone's mind is how bad is this ice issue? So we've heard a lot about ice and how detrimental it can be, but how many people is this plaguing? So according to recent statistics released in 2014, approximately 1 in 70 people in our country have reported ice use in the previous 12 months. So this might not seem like much. This is actually 1.4% of the population, so it's less than 2%, but this is still a significant proportion of our population. So approximately there's 24 people in this country, it's 24 million people in this country, and 1.4% of this is actually 330,000 people that have used ice in the last 12 months. Now of these people, 44% have used it once or twice. So what this means is that ice isn't being used recreationally. For the most part, it is habitual and people are using it on a frequent basis. Now more alarmingly, approximately 20% are using this on a weekly or daily basis. And this is really worrying because that's 70,000 people using this on a very frequent basis. So this is particularly detrimental for the criminal justice system, so the police, the courts and corrections, as well as the health sector. And I'll show you why. So according to the Health of Australia's Prisoners report released in 2015, prison entrants are 10 times more likely to be using methamphetamine. And that indicates that methamphetamine is a strong criminogenic need, And what that basically translates to is that ice use has been linked to crime and going to jail. Now, a lot of people may, give the idea that people should just arrest anyone who's using ice or methamphetamine, arrest your way out of the problem. But as was heard from Charles, this isn't actually a good cause. And the reason why is because ice isn't discriminating. It affects our family members, our parents, our children, our spouses. It affects a wide portion of the community, including grandparents. And obviously taking these people away isn't going to work with the social community and creating cohesion. Now, this was released by DUMA, which is the Drug Use Monitoring Australia Association. And basically it's from police detainees in Brisbane that tested positive to methamphetamine. So for those of you who don't know, methamphetamine is detectable in urine for up to 72 hours. And what this means is that of these people that tested positive, they used ice in the past 3 days. So in 2009, it was approximately 12%, which is relatively low. But in 2015, it rose to 43%. So this is a 358% increase in only 6 years. So it's extremely worrying. The most surprising stat that I personally found was of prison entrants identifying their drug of choice previous to being incarcerated. What it showed was that of the prisoners who detected drug use, 50% were with methamphetamine. So half the prison population that identified drug use was due to methamphetamine. This has actually surpassed cannabis at 41%. So ice is the main drug of choice being used in prisons. Now this does vary from state to state, but on average, it costs approximately $292 per day to house an inmate. And this equates to $106,000 per year per inmate. Now, if it's affecting approximately half of the population, that's 19,000 people that are in jail, at least partially due to ice, and that costs approximately $2 billion per year. So it's an extremely costly issue. And this brings us to cliff theory. So some of you may have heard cliff theory before. It's been commonly used in the medical profession or the health sector. And basically what it states here is that we have an at-risk population, and these are our adolescents or our youths. It's kind of like being at the top of the cliff and they're just walking towards the edge. They're high risk and they're on the verge of forming addiction. Now, when we get to the edge of the cliff, you fall off, and that results in full-blown ice addiction. What we're currently doing, and the Commonwealth is currently doing, is focusing predominantly on treatment. And it's similar to getting all of these sectors, so the health sector, police, corrections, rehab, social workers. All of these people are kind of at the bottom with a net, and they're trying to catch the problem as it emerges to its final level. It's a full-blown ice addiction. And this was reflected in the National Ice Strategy of 2015. Approximately 240 million went into treatment, but only 24 million went into prevention. So 10 times more resources have gone into treatment, and that's when ice addiction has merged to its full status. Now, what we're proposing is the #1 ice prevention program in the country is that we can stop this issue. So it's kind of like putting a stop sign at the edge of a cliff. We have these at-risk youth that are getting towards the cliff. They're spiraling into the phase of addiction, and we're there to stop it, similar to putting a stop sign up. What we're proposing is prevention through education and intervention. And what this will ultimately do is reduce the burden on the government sectors so that they're not focusing predominantly on treatment and that they can do their jobs accordingly. So I'll hand over to Fox to introduce Fuel and more about what we do.
My name is Sutton Fox Shupop. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I'm extremely honored and privileged to be in this great country to study and to take what I consider is a huge issue in the community right now, which is methamphetamine. I'd like to share a personal story with you guys before I continue on. When I was in high school in 2004, my mates and I grew up in a dry county, which means there's no alcohol. There's maybe about 2,000 people in the whole town. We're, as you probably guess, cowboys and ranchers just running around having fun. And we would have a meet up every morning in the same pasture, all jump in the same truck, go to the same school. It was like clockwork every day, y'all. And then one day, one of our close friends, I'm going to say his name is Jake Richardson, just for fun. Jake Richardson was a son of a pastor of the local church. Outstanding young man. Head of the football team. We're talking student council, volunteer, just an all-around, what I'd call a good Texan. He disappeared for a few weeks halfway through our senior year. We didn't know where he went. We had no idea. We couldn't get a hold of him. His family didn't know where he went. Come about after spring break, he rocked up. And the man that we once knew, the young man we once knew, was no longer there. We had clearly seen that he had gotten into ice. And this was a brand new drug in our community. We had never heard of it. There was no talks about it from our counselors. Our parents didn't know what it was. It was something that was dropped on us so hard that the whole town was shocked. So this young man, just after 2 weeks of being gone, showed up. His skin had turned yellow. His eyes had turned yellow. He had lost maybe about 10 kilos, and he wasn't the same person. He didn't talk to us the same. The love that he used to show us was not the same. Things would start to disappear around my household. And, it hurts when someone does that to you that you truly care about, that you truly love. And we didn't know how to prevent this. We didn't know who to turn to. His parents weren't there to help because they didn't understand. The school wasn't there to help because they didn't understand. And the police didn't want to get involved because they didn't know, how are you going to take a good kid who's head of the football team, straight A student? You can't just lock him up. That's not how you solve the problem. So what we ended up doing is we pulled what we call an intervention. I'm sure everyone knows what that is. We got together with them, we sat him down, and we looked him right in the eye, held his hand, and said, Jake, this has got to stop, because you're not affecting yourself. You're affecting me. You're affecting all my friends, all my comrades, my family. The whole community is worried about you. And it took him weeks and weeks and weeks to finally realize that he was hurting all of us. Every day we saw him, it was worse and worse and worse. One particular day that I'll remember, it's been burned in my mind for the rest of my life. We were sitting in the driveway waiting to go to school, about 07:30, and he comes walking up. It looked like he hadn't showered in days. He had blood coming out of his certain part of his face. We don't know if he had been to a fight. Without saying a word, he walked up to us, and he just tipped over, and he banged his head on the concrete. Knocked 2 of his teeth out, pretty much broke his nose, fractured his skull. He stood up immediately, y'all, and didn't say a word. Didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't make any notion that it happened. In his opinion, in his mind, it never happened. That was a breaking point for us. We got the local police department on the line. Our local sergeant, who we were very close with, worked with our football team. He came down and picked him up, and he went to his parents' house, and Jake disappeared for about 3 months in a rehab. When he got back, he was a clean person, but the damage had already been done. He did have some permanent damage to his face, where he had to have some constructive surgery on his nose. His teeth had rotted out a little bit, so he had to get some fake teeth put in. And he just wasn't the same lovable, bubbly guy that that we had grown up with, that we were so fond of and we loved so much. And even though we're still friends to this day, I miss the little boy that I grew up with. And it really put me into a mood of thinking that if this is happening in my country in 2004, when I came over here and I'm seeing the epidemic 15 years later, it's the same exact situation, guys. It's the same thing. There has to be a prevention program put into place. The kids don't know, they're going to try it. Especially these millennials. Everyone knows the term millennial, and we all know how hard-headed they are. They have the information in front of them. They have access to unlimited information, especially in a free country like Australia. They can get online and find out anything they wanted to at any time, but they choose not to. And if anyone tries to tell them what they're going to do, what not to do, how to do it, try to force them, what's going to happen? They're going to step back, and they're going to look at you like you're stupid because you're an adult. You don't know any better. That's where we come in. This is where Fuel comes in. We talk to these kids on their level. We don't tell them what to do. We don't give them scare tactics. We don't scream at them. We simply provide the facts, the information, and allow them to make the own decision on their self. When they talk to us, they realize that we're not here to bully them. We're not here because their parents sent us here. We're here because we want to be here. These two fine gentlemen over here, I've been extremely privileged to run into. And when Charles Rolls told me and Bradley told me what they were doing in this country, I jumped at the opportunity. I've been volunteering my free time for 5 months now to help whatever we can do to help to get this program off the ground. Because someone has to do something. Every day that goes by, we see it getting worse and worse and worse. And you cannot arrest your way out of it. Violence will not solve this problem. Scare won't solve the problem. The only way is to get in there early and let them know that someone cares and someone is willing to talk to them. And if they have questions, they can come to us. And we notice with most of the kids we talk to, they don't want to talk to adults. They want to talk to younger adults who kind of know what's going on in the world, who aren't going to jump down their throat every single time they say something silly or what they think is pretentious or upsetting or anything. We talk to them on a simple level. And playing games with the kids, interacting with every single student in the audience. There is no one in the audience that I will not make contact with during my time, or I will not personally try to make some kind of personal connection with. Because you can talk to a whole audience like right now, If I saved one person or stopped one kid from trying one hit of meth, to me, the whole 5 months is absolutely worth it. Every effort. One child, that's all I need for me to be successful, for me to feel like that I did my part, that I came here and I put the effort and I got into it, what I put out of it. And this is where fuel comes in. Charles has been running sorry, sir?
Spacebar.
Sorry. So how we get into fuel is the future understanding of essential learning. Fantastic acronym, I think. And the Y2K program is pushing this fuel program to start up a new way of touching kids and getting into the relationships of talking with them and getting on their level, giving them the proper information and letting them make the educated decision what to do with their life. And every time we talk to students, we see the same thing getting better and better and better. They want the information, they don't know who to go to, they don't know who to turn to. They can't ask their parents because they're afraid. Their teachers don't want to talk. They don't want to talk to their teachers because they don't want to be labeled or judged. Especially with this day in social media, we all know one bad post or one wrong post on a kid, cyberbullying's out of control. So nobody wants their personal business out there. And that's where we want to do follow-up programs with these kids. Give them a chance to email us, in 5 or 6 months. Call that principal of the school and say, hey, we noticed so-and-so and so came and talked to us. How are they doing? Maybe we can come back or send them an email and maybe do some personal one-on-one time with them. Whatever we can do to help is what I'm willing to do. Anything. I want to be getting involved in the juvenile system. I want to be involved in youth systems, high schools, anything that will help the great people of Australia not fall into the problem that my country went into is what I want to see happen. Because we're 15, 20 years into our ice epidemic and we're just now getting a grip of it. We can't lock people up. They're going to go in and they're going to come out worse than they went in. I've seen it for myself. I've had friends go in. When I left the military and came back into my hometown, I had friends locked into jail simply for using drugs. Louder? Oh, sorry. I'm running a little long, y'all. Sorry. My southern accent likes me to push forward. I could talk about this all day. I'm passionate. I love doing this. If anyone would like to get on board with this program, my hand is out. Please take it. I'll be happy to follow. I'll be happy to lead.